So I did end up in hospital, and that's when the body starts to talk to you. Are you listening? It is very draining, right? Having to try to hold back on who you are and what you want to be. Everybody has different signs of stress. Your heart rate goes up, you sweat a lot. Some is blood pressure, right? Some overeat. Many people who go years feeling numb or suppressing, you will find that they end up having some health issues.
If you're in this mode for months or even years, what does it do to you?
Cortisol it actually wears down your internal organs. Over time, for the body, it creates strain and stress. My name is Sha-En. I'm the founder of Happiness Scientists. I'm a positive psychologist by training. Positive psychology in a nutshell is really the study or the scientific research behind the question of what makes people thrive. Head of a major identity crisis was when I first became a mom. I was a high achiever, and I look at myself in the mirror and I don't recognize myself. But I brought life to this world. And I had to say that to myself in front of the mirror many times. People always think that psychologists have it all together, but I tell you a little secret. The reason why we went into psychology is because
What is positive psychology?
Yeah, so positive psychology in a nutshell is really the study or the scientific research behind the question of what makes people thrive. So if we think about psychology in the past used to be about finding the answer to what's wrong with people. People have anxiety, they have depression, and then a psychologist is usually called in to try to determine, hey, what's up with them, right?
Yeah.
And you know the typical where they sit on the couch and then the psychologist is talking to them. But after so many years of studying psychology, I think the psychologists weren't closer to the answer of then what makes the rest of the people who are doing okay or really thriving in life, what makes them tick? And so positive psychology was named in 1998 by Dr. Martin Seligman to really answer that question, right? What is it that makes an individual thrive? What is it that makes societies thrive? What makes nations thrive?
On the topic of thriving, I was sharing a lot of my own personal stories, right? Leaving my work, my previous company, and just feeling that sense of identity loss, right? And I once felt like I was having this identity crisis. What is this identity crisis that didn't allow me to thrive?
When we think of identity crisis, there are two parts, two words. First is identity, and then the second is crisis. And identity, if you think about it, what is your identity? It is made up of the things that you do, your habits, your way of being, right? So as a working adult, maybe your identity was wake up, brush your teeth, check your emails. All these are a sequence of habits and actions that make up your identity. Crisis is when something is no longer the way that you expected it to be, and you suddenly don't understand why you're in that space. So if we put two together, it's that, hey, the things that I used to do on a day-to-day basis are no longer there. So I'm in crisis because I don't understand it. It makes it really difficult for me to connect with my new reality. Right? So psychologists, maybe a more familiar term is what we call an existential crisis. That if I don't recognize this place where I am and I don't recognize myself, then why am I even existing? That's why we call it existential crisis.
I can resonate a lot with that because exiting the work that I've done, I've poured so much into, that purpose, that meaning, right? And the next day, you're lost, right? You're lost and you have that crisis. That's what you've mentioned. In talking to people, they find themselves lost in a sense, right? They find themselves in that crisis of their own identity in work, in life. Why is that happening? I'm hearing a lot of that. Has that got to do with the pandemic, post-pandemic? Love your thoughts.
In the pandemic, we were all forced to stay at home or stay still. And our world is so constructed in a way that we're always moving. Go, 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 do. That identity of running is suddenly asked to stay still. That is so uncomfortable for so many people. And when you go through something like that, it forces you to think, then what do I do with this current state that I'm in? So people start to reevaluate during the pandemic. Is this really what I want to do? Is this really, can I get comfortable with this stillness and silence? And some people did tell me that it's the first time they are having a meal all together as a family. Nobody is flying here and there. And at first it's like, this is weird because I don't normally see my family on a Friday night. But then it's a new reality. They slowly adjust and say, hey, actually, this is nice. I did want to spend time with my family, but they didn't have the space to consider that that could be possible. Right? So a lot of re-evaluating happened during the pandemic.
But even many years later now, we're still feeling kind of like that loss. We can't go out and move around. But I think also the space where work has changed, right? Remote working,
Yes.
folks hasn't maybe really gone back to the workplace as well. And young workers going to a space where they're like, this is, I'm alone, right? I feel I don't have that connection. Do you feel like that's also still happening today?
After opening up, you would have thought that, wow, if everybody had this huge re-evaluation, then they would change. But behaviors, who we are as a human, stay very fixed and rigid, only if we are willing to question what those are. So if we went through the pandemic and came out exactly the same, and we didn't stop to evaluate, it's totally possible because we wanted to safeguard our identity. There are people who cracked open something and they shifted maybe something small. And therefore people, it was like a phew, came out 360. No, I really don't want to be that person anymore.
I think for yourself as a positive psychologist, I wanted to ask you, like, potentially that identity crisis. Have you felt that way too before?
Oh, 100%. People always think that psychologists have it all together, but I tell you a little secret is that the reason why we went into psychology is because we did not have it all together. And many of us start to ask ourselves the beginning questions that lead us down this path. I think the first experience I had of a major identity crisis was when I first became a mom. I was a high achiever. I have a lot of goals that I wanted to achieve. And when I became a mom, suddenly, you mean that my only thing I need to do today is play with my baby and go and express the milk and repeat? And I look at myself in the mirror and I don't recognize myself. Because, hey, I used to be able to, quote unquote, achieve so much. And so as a mom, the definition of achievement is very different.
How did that process change you?
I mean, I looked at my child and I think it was like, okay, so I'm not able to achieve all of that, but I brought life to this world. And I had to say that to myself in front of the mirror many times.
Oh, wow.
Because being a mom is a 24/7 job. Yeah, but I also have to confess that 4 months into it, I felt the pull of wanting to do something more. So when we say purpose, it's something that comes from inside. I already wanted to help people. And so in between, at 4 months, when my baby was 4 months, I actually went to pursue a coaching course.
Was there a part of you that you felt was missing, right? And therefore you wanted to pursue this coaching?
Yeah, I guess as a mom, because I had so much time in a way to just be a mom, but I missed the idea of, hey, I'm also a person who wants to help other people aside from my own child. So where is she? Where do I find her? So I guess I went into coaching to learn the skills to help other people because that was what I wanted to do, right? And in the process of going through the coaching program, we also have to ask ourselves lots of questions. We had to have role plays. And that's when some parts of myself started to re-emerge, right? After 4 months of motherhood. And it's very hard for a mom to reconcile because you feel guilt when you think, I could be happy doing something else besides looking after my own child.
Yes.
But it's also coming to terms with the fact that being a mom wasn't my sole identity.
But I think to get to that point, we have to lose ourselves first. What does it mean, right, to lose ourselves?
Sometimes when you lose yourself, you may not immediately realize it. I think in society, we are sold this idea of having only a singular identity. But human beings are very complex. And what we must do is to welcome the complexity that our identity is made up of many parts. And can we welcome all the parts, right? Otherwise, we'll feel guilty.
Yeah.
I'm a mom, I feel bad that I'm not contributing. I'm contributing, I feel bad I'm not spending time with my child. We hear this all the time, right? But if we welcome the complexity that I can be a mom and I can contribute and I can blah, 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 then we will feel more at peace with who we are, right? But the process is we need to ask ourselves, what else constitutes who we are? That's how we begin to find back that lost self, so to speak.
Why do people lose themselves in life, in the process of doing what they're doing?
We listen to a lot of narratives around us. Have you ever had the experience when people ask you, hey, Derek, you should ... right? And then that becomes something you internalize.
Yes.
Right? You should do this, you must do this. In order to get this, you have to do this. Right? Growing up, we had the 5 C's to be a successful person. These are templates and narratives that we buy into. But it doesn't mean that we really believe it. You realize sometimes when you have achieved it that, I don't recognize this, I don't really like this, but everyone around is doing it. So sometimes we lose ourselves because we're just trying to fit into that template. We're trying to meet up to maybe our parental expectations of us, or what we're supposed to do in this role, in this journey, in this path. That's when we start discounting, like, okay, so I have needs and my desires, but I'm not supposed to encourage that. I've been told not to.
It's interesting because it's almost like a reframe from the idea of losing yourself, but rather again finding that missing self that has been really buried. What are some of these signs, right? Early signs that you kind of feel like you're not yourself, or you're losing yourself in that sense?
Very early signs likely start in the body. Like, say you have this feeling like, my gut doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
That is already an early sign that something you're doing is not in alignment with your true self. But many of us have learned not to pay attention to that. Again, because of expectations and paths. So we just follow the path. But also signs that maybe feeling numb, right? Someone tells you, hey, let's go and do this. And everyone's very excited, but you're like, meh. So you start to feel numb. Or for some people, it's just going through the motion. You wake up, okay lor, go to work lor. Then look at the clock at 4 o'clock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Then you come back and thinking, shouldn't I just be enjoying this more? But you just can't find the ability to do that.
Why do we ignore the signs?
I'll give you an example. Like, growing up, I was very emotional. I still am, and I cry a lot. Yeah, but people around me would say, why you cry so much? Right? So I learned that I cannot cry. Or if I cry, it must be done in silence, in my own room under my blanket. And because I feel so much, I start to tell myself, don't feel so much lah. Because it's an inconvenience to other people, or they don't like me showing up that way. When we buy into that, then we start to suppress who we really are. I think there's a cultural angle to it, right? We defer to people who are more senior to us. Most likely our parents, a parental figure. When we go to school, it's our teachers. Hey, sit down, don't stop running. Why you run so much? An active child needs to run.
Yeah.
But we tell our children, don't run. So they have to use a lot of energy to sit in the chair. When actually inside is like, and that's actually how they learn and how they play, right? So there's a lot of all these systems around us that I think we are not so conscious about as we are growing up. And then when we become adults, we just follow because that's kind of the conditioning that we've been through.
You think that that's right as well also because of what has happened in the past, right? It just keeps going on. You don't stop to even kind of like reflect.
Because it wasn't safe to stop and reflect. So for example, a parent says, hey, you need to become a lawyer, a doctor, and this thing. So the child learns that is the way I earn approval of my parent, by doing what they ask me to do. If I challenge that, it's not safe, they won't love me. There's this tussle between authenticity and attachment. Children want to attach to the parent because if not, they can't survive.
Not feeling safe to stop and reflect. It goes all the way to adulthood as well.
Yeah. Because when we reflect, we'll start to feel those emotions that we buried, that we suppressed. And it's scary if you haven't accessed them for a long time. It becomes overwhelming, right? And it's therefore, it feels better to go and distract. Let me go and watch Netflix for a while. let me go and grab a beer.
Wow.
Sometimes even, let me go and exercise it away. It's good because at least it's healthy. But sometimes in the exercise, you're focused on your muscles that you don't stop to think about how you feel.
It could almost form into an unhealthy addiction as well.
Yeah.
To
There are people who
suppress that.
spend 4 hours at the gym. I'm not judging them. I'm saying that we have different ways to cope when big emotions come up.
If you're in this mode for months or even years, what does it do to you, your body, your mind, yourself?
It is very draining, right? Having to try to hold back on who you are and what you want to be. Yeah, and so over time for the body, it creates what we call drain and stress. The cortisol hormones get produced. And cortisol it actually wears down your internal organs, which you don't realize. So many people who go years feeling numb or suppressing, you will find that they end up having some health issues because your body is holding the weight of all this that you can't be and you can't do. So like for me, it was like that, right? I went through my first job as a teacher, and after that working as an education officer. I didn't enjoy that period of time. It was very stressful. But I had to be there, I had to finish the years that I was there. And so I just tell myself, it's okay. Put yourself together, get your act together, right? Go to work. Get through the day. I'm sure many of us have this narrative. Get through the day, you have to. But then the body takes its toll. So I did end up in hospital.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's when the body starts to talk to you already. Like, are you listening? And that's why a lot of people have revelations when they're very sick because they realize, oh yeah, I've actually been pushing so hard, suppressing.
Can you help me explain a little bit more about the cortisol levels?
I mean, you would start to notice the signs of stress. Everybody has different signs of stress. Some is like your heart rate goes up, you sweat a lot. Some is blood pressure, right? Some overeat to cope. Stress manifests through different ways. It could be aches in your body. So people have migraine, backache, guttural pain, gastric. All of these are signs that cortisol is very present in your body. But many of us would just say, oh, it's normal. You got migraine? I have migraine also.
Yeah.
And we think that just because everyone has it means it's normal.
Yeah.
But these are already early signs that the stress is speaking to you.
So what are the tools that you have as a positive psychologist, right, to help others?
I have this framework that I've created. It's 5 R's. The first R is to recognize. Recognize what you're experiencing in the moment. The second is review, to really listen to the story of what those things are telling you. And the third one is to reflect and ask, is that true for me? Is that really what I want? Right? And then the fourth R is reimagine. Given all this knowledge that we now have, can we reimagine a possibility for how it could be different? Right? And then the last is then we act, we respond, we choose the response that we want to have. And I find that having this structure allows us to unpack a little bit while also feeling that we can take action rather than remain stuck. So the first stage is just recognition. I always start by saying the first state of that is when you're calm, then you start to recognize what is showing up in you. Your thoughts? What are the thoughts running through my mind? What am I feeling? My emotions? And what is in my body? Right? So, for example, if you're feeling stressed in that moment, even though you've done the breath work, your thought could be, I need to finish this thing.
Correct.
Thought, okay? The feeling could be stress, anxiety, all kinds. And we say it without judgment. It's just like reading something on the page. You're just listing. Okay? And then, how am I feeling in my body? Maybe my jaw is clenched. Maybe my stomach's tight.
And you know that it's also not easy to do that.
Yes.
Reflecting on the experience I had myself, I was sharing how I used to love Mondays, right? Going to work.
Yeah.
But then I felt this disconnection, and then going on Mondays is like, oh, I dread it. But at the same time, the story you tell yourself is the money needs to come in, right? The team needs to sustain. Therefore, I just keep going. I also feel like I may suppress that. How could I get over also that needing to suppress?
Yeah, we always say we allow. So the opposite of suppress is express. And to allow the emotion to be present. Which means that if you are feeling anxious, instead of stuffing it away, putting it in a box because it's not convenient, we allow the anxiety to be present. Meaning that you feel the heart rate going up, you feel the pum 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 pum. At least that's how it shows up for me, anxiety. Pum 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 in my head, right? And then maybe jelly legs. And you allow it just for that 1 minute. Because the body recognizes already what you are telling yourself, which is, I'm anxious.
So you need to feel it.
You allow yourself to feel it. For people, this is uncomfortable because we are so used to not feeling it. But when we feel it, then we know the signs. You asked earlier, how do we know that we're losing ourselves? Only by feeling it can we start to recognize it. That is why we need to feel it. And why people don't want to do it? Because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to allow those emotions to occur in case they feel something wrong is going to happen. So again, these are the early signs of not being ourselves. We don't know how to even tune into that. But do it in a space where you feel safe. Right? It could be in the toilet if you're at work. It could be with someone that you trust. It could be at home, where you have a pillow or a blanket where you can hold for comfort. And just allow so that you can get to know it. Don't jump into any judgment first. Recognition. Then the second stage is what we call reveal. We ask ourselves, what is this all telling us? Emotions. What is the emotion trying to tell me? All these are what we call data points. We have a thought. What is the thought saying? Right? So back to the example, maybe the tense stomach and the anxiety is actually trying to tell you that maybe you are doing something that is quite challenging and demanding, but maybe you don't feel like you have all the handles. We learn to listen to all these signals because they are telling us a story. But if we don't stop to listen, then we just accelerate through it with power. But actually we need to break and pause to reveal what is this story.
Maybe you want to talk about reflection, like knowing, recognizing, and revealing what you're feeling. How does that translate into reflection?
An important question to start with is this where I want to be? Is this how I'd like to feel? Is this helping me to be like this? Or is it actually harming me to feel like this? And we have to really bring our honest selves into this process. And sometimes it can be quite confronting to hear the answers. For example, I don't really like to be anxious all the time, right? But it's at least being true to yourself that you recognize that anxiety is not supportive of you at this moment. But it could also turn out that, hey, maybe the anxiety is helpful. By being anxious, I'm pushing myself to do the best that I can do. Right? So the reflection space is for you to make sense of the emotions and thoughts that have come up in the revealing part of the process.
And the reflection state, again, requires you to don't judge yourself.
Yes. Healthy dose of grace for yourself.
Be honest, be truthful. And in a way, it doesn't shroud, right, in the kind of stories that might, or the conditioning, right? So it is a muscle to really work on it. And I think the more you do that reflection, again, attuning, recognizing, revealing, and then going into that more reflection time and time again, I think it's a muscle that you train. Right?
It is, and self-compassion is very important because if we are always judging, then we are not in the present anymore. We are like going to the past and bringing back all those stories. But if those stories are coming up, then again, we ask ourselves during the reflection, where did these stories come from? Right? And is it really helping me in this moment? And sometimes the stories are quite deep, right? So for example, stories of anxiety could be linked to, I never felt good enough. And so here I am trying to take on this demanding job, and so I'm feeling anxious. Right? And so the reflection part, we can give ourselves time. We don't have to rush through. And it's not something that you can do in one afternoon for some people. It depends on what is the challenge you're bringing into this space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it almost sometimes reveal itself sometime.
sometimes.
Down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for some people who have kept it locked away for very long, it's like an onion you're unpeeling. You just unpeel layer one, and that's okay. Yeah. Nobody expect you to go straight to the bulb because it can be very confronting.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have to understand ourselves as well, and that's why the body tells us a lot. If we are feeling, wow, this is too much, my head is going to explode. Yeah, the compassion comes in and says, you're doing the best you can in the moment.
What's the next R?
Yeah. The next R is reimagine.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Right? So then we start to reimagine, say, we understand what the story anxiety is telling us, and we ask ourselves, this is not really helping me. Then we start to reimagine possibilities. What do I want to show up as instead? Right? Maybe I want to be excited instead of anxious. Maybe I want to be mildly anxious, but mostly hopeful. So we have a choice. Many of us live life on autopilot. That means we are not exercising agency or choice. We're just going through it. But because of the process of slowing down, now we have the ability to reimagine what it could be like. Yeah, and we don't want people to just get stuck in reflecting. I have clients who do tell me, Sha-En, I reflect all the time. I still have no answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we are hopeful creatures actually by nature, right? A sunflower turns towards the light. People always want to seek answers. So reimagining gives us that space to do that, right? What could it be like? And we ask ourselves that, what could it be like? How could it be possible? And the more we ask ourselves these kinds of questions in the reimagining phase, a new reality starts to be possible. I could be excited about this new job that's been given to me. How could I be excited about it? What's exciting about it? So we start to reimagine. Yeah.
And I love this also because after you reimagine, you almost have that shift in your mindset. But what's important is your last R, which is really to react, right? To act
respond.
on, to respond
Yes.
to that. And that's action.
Now that I can feel excited about that, then what do I want to do? Maybe I actually do want to go and meet up with this person. But maybe before that you were dreading it, you was anxious. Right? So now you have a new story. Yeah, and it's a process of, in the brain, what's happening is rewiring. The old story is a well-trodden path. The new story, through this process that you're trying to build, is like cutting grass.
Discomfort.
Discomfort,
But
right?
it's growth.
But it's growth. You find a new path. And the beautiful part about neuroplasticity in the brain is we can always rewire.
Maybe taking the framework, right? I know I have a challenge in life. When I exited my company, I was also in that phase of reflecting. And I saw that slowing down was very helpful in surfacing answers. But coming into a new role now with B, I'm also very conscious that I've got to hustle. But at the same time, because I've gone through this process of slowing down, I wanted to ensure that I still do that. Right? So I'm reimagining how running a new venture would look like. Not only doing, but also being in that state of being as well also. But I do find it difficult to do that at the moment right now. How would you help someone like me or others who might be feeling that?
I would ask you, what's difficult about it? Where's the tension?
The anxiety of being afraid of falling back into that same cycle over and over again, that guilt of why am I not hustling, the guilt of slowing down or rest, I think that surfaces out sometimes too.
And so I think it's important to tease out the story, right? Where does the anxiety live in your body, number one? What are the thoughts that come up when you're anxious? Right? And same for guilt. Right? Where did these stories, you think, come from?
I think on guilt, and it almost feels like that conditioning you talk about, right? Where you're constantly on this cycle and system, be it education system, right? You're always constantly moving. Same with work, I guess. In running a company, you've got targets to hit, revenue to hit, and it almost resets every year. Yeah. And you're always, I guess, on that hamster wheel, right? Just going. So taking a step out of it meant that you lose that momentum almost because you are on this track of constantly moving.
Yeah, when we think about guilt, we have to ask ourselves, what actually is the emotion of guilt? Guilt is saying that you are doing what you're not supposed to do,
Yes.
right? And the conditioning is the supposed to do. So then we ask, is it helping you? In what way is guilt helping you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do catch myself at times where I'm like, hey, you're not supposed to be doing this. You should be doing that. But you don't give yourself that compassion, right? To say, I need this rest. I need this time to take a step back, right? To reflect, to see the bigger picture. And almost that is necessary to grow. So the reimagined narrative for me felt like you've got to slow down to go faster. Because it doesn't always mean that doing gets you faster or moves you there faster.
Derek, when you speak, I see black and white. It's like an either or. I either slow down or I go fast.
Yeah.
I either think about profit or I think about purpose. And my challenge to you is, what if it could be and? What if it could be and? Right? Are there elements from what you have experienced that you can bring into this? Because that's the benefit of hindsight.
I love this because it goes back to even deeper like conditioning, right? Education system again. You got to choose arts or science.
Yeah.
And I chose arts.
You either succeed or you fail.
Correct. And school system principals were like, no, you got to do science. You're great at science. Oh, that means I cannot do arts. No, you can't do arts because the modules don't sync up. And I think it's that conditioning. But I love film. I love arts, right? But I'm really good at science. And oddly, it is this tension that I've have over the years. That becomes like either this or that. What then had happened was I started my company, my previous company. And it was very intentional to combine the both, technology and content coming together. Maybe what had happened as I exited the company, I lost a bit of that dream or that imagination of bringing it together, that I am at a current state where I kind of went back to this state of loss of, it's going back to either or. But it's remembering
the different parts of yourself want to come together.
Wow.
To be you.
Yeah.
So if we allow it, instead of resisting it, like when you choose, right, A or B, you are actually saying, I don't want this. I only want this. But actually they are both trying to tell you, Derek, we want to be together. We want to be whole as one.
Yeah.
Can you allow it? And what would that feel like? Right? And that's where we talk about review. The story is that they want to come together. Now in the reflection, then, which is why I ask you, is it possibility to allow for and to exist? Because then you can move into the reimagine. What would and look like? If I make profit and I have purpose, what is that picture? Now, it may not be something that is in your mind space at the moment because the box and frame of reference is the either or mental model.
Yeah.
But what if we move into and? Suddenly, you have this opportunity to dismantle this box, right? And maybe it's not even a box.
Yeah.
It could be a playground.
Yeah.
A playground, a metaphor that you resonate with. Yeah. Then you can say, hey, I could have someone look into the commercials, for example, to drive that. I could be in my wheelhouse and play, whatever that means to you, right? And hey, what about family? How do they come along this journey with me? Because and brings possibilities.
And it's nice because it goes back to the conversation we had, at the beginning as well. So we wear so many different identities.
Yeah.
And that shift from either or to and, wow.
It's very powerful.
It's powerful.
It's very powerful. It's just like when you only can think of one box to sit in, that's why you feel stuck. Literally, people are sitting in boxes.
Yes.
Or when they come to me and say, Sha-En, I feel so stuck. Yeah. But they don't have to sit there. And that's why the reflection part is we ask ourselves, do we really need to stay in the box? What would it feel like? At first, it feels unsafe because that's what the conditioning does to us.
Thank you so much for today's conversation, Sha-En.
You're welcome.
Learned
The
so
last R is for you to action upon.
Yes, for sure.
What is your response? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
You may not have the answer right now.
Yeah, and just prototyping that little bit of what it means to do
Yeah.
and be
Yeah.
at the same time.
And I love that because prototype means that we don't have to fix in stone either.
Yes.
Yeah, the more we allow and ask ourselves what we really want and challenge some of these long-held conditioning narratives, the more we get closer to revealing for ourselves what is it we really want and how we can possibly live. Yeah.
It's an amazing cycle. And I'll definitely take this conversation into, little bits of introducing this in their life.
How do you feel now?
That shift in all to end, powerful. And I realized it was also a narrative that I was trying to get myself into at a very young age. I was very rebellious in trying to bring both. Going through the identity crisis of mine allows me to reconnect back. I think
that's
that's
beautiful.
This is beautiful.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
You're
Sha-En.
welcome. Thanks for having me.
No,
Enjoy
thank
our
you.
conversation.
Thank you for joining us today on this conversation with me and Sha-En on Be Curious. We'll be compiling a guide for you to download in the links below. If you have any comments, if you would like to share, what you've learned from this episode, drop in the comments below as well. And do subscribe to our channel to stay tuned to new episodes.